All right, hi everybody. Welcome back to another edition of Wrestling with Wrestling. I'm Steve, and joining me as always, my partner in crime, the best referee in all of independent pro wrestling, the great Doc Gregory. How's it going, Doc?
Oh, everything is going great. It's just been one of those work weeks. So far, it's been pretty easy, but last weekend was pretty brutal on me. But it was nice to have a free weekend. I didn't do any wrestling shows this past weekend, and since we're heading into that independent wrestling season, having a weekend off completely is going to be very rare.
Yeah, isn't it interesting how it's uh, even with how incredibly different the wrestling scene is now as opposed to like 30 years ago. There's always still like spring is always a huge time for wrestling shows.
Hmm.
It's WrestleMania season, and then it seems like March, April, May. Those are like really really big months. Even though like the NWA isn't really around anymore, and it's just a lot of sort of independent promotions. It's kind of always been that way. It's like the spring, and then sort of like the holidays toward the end of the year. Those are like the big, wrestling show times.
Yeah, that's what I like about Elite that I work for is that they tend to run all year long. They might take like the last 2 months of the year off, uh, just because it's a holiday season. They know people have money that they need to save up to spend, so they don't
Yeah.
want to, be taxing them with, wrestling shows or bothering them with that. Even though we still probably have fans come out, but that they pretty much run all year long. That's what I like about that. And they will have a show almost every month coming, starting to flow now.
Yeah. Yeah, it's cool. So let's talk about this is our last show before WrestleMania 30. We have finally arrived. We started doing the show in January when the WrestleMania build was just finally starting to heat up with the Royal Rumble and everything. And now here we are, our last show before WrestleMania 30. So we have Raw to talk about. I want to talk about our predictions for WrestleMania. And then we also have a Legend of the Week as always. So we got a lot to do. So let's dive in to last night's Monday Night Raw, which was right in our backyard in Washington, D.C., about 60 or 70 miles down the road from the area where we live. And it started off with The Undertaker. They gave us sort of the last push for Undertaker and Brock to open the show. What do you think of that segment?
Well, apparently, and I mentioned this to you earlier. The only reason that they put Undertaker out there first on the show was because they knew that they were going to have heavy numbers battling against them in the ratings because of the series finale of How I Met Your Mother. So that is why they actually put the Undertaker out there first. But yeah, Undertaker came out there. I thought his speech was really really good. We don't get to hear him talk all that much, especially nowadays. It's like once a year. Um, but I think the catchphrase, the only three things you can be certain of, death, taxes, that we'll say around our death, taxes, and the streak. I thought that was a really good catchphrase there for the show.
Yeah.
And of course, the music hits, Brock Lesnar comes down, and this is where I thought they finally handed one to him, because at first when he jumped in that ring, Undertaker caught him, and I thought, oh no, here it comes again. They're going to let him beat down Brock one more time. But then Brock caught him and gave him the F5. And I'm having a funny feeling. No, I'm not having a funny feeling. I'm pretty sure he's going to give the Undertaker the F5 at WrestleMania. He might not beat him with it. Matter of fact, I'm pretty sure Undertaker. This is what I'm betting on right here. Undertaker will sit straight up from the F5. Well, he'll get the pin attempt. He'll do the heavy kick out and sit straight up.
Yeah, that is probably a good bet. There's going to be a sit-up spot at some point
Hmm.
because it's the Undertaker, and what else? What better spot to do that in than to have Brock F5 him? And I thought it was a pretty good segment, but I just wish that they had kind of done it 2 weeks ago. I mean,
Hmm.
we talked about last week how it's just this whole Brock Undertaker thing has just felt kind of cold. Brock hasn't really done very much. I mean, he's come out and Heyman's cut some really good promos, but Undertaker hasn't really ever looked vulnerable. There's never really been any serious doubt introduced in the minds of fans that Undertaker could lose this match.
Hmm.
Uh, and so it's nice that they finally gave Brock something, that he went in there and at least hit his finish on the Undertaker and looked strong coming out. But I mean, even among like the most hardcore wrestling is real marks in the audience, does anybody really believe that Brock has a chance of beating the Undertaker? I mean, I just don't think they've told that story very well. I mean, everybody thinks Undertaker's going to win, right?
Yeah. If it was $2, I still wouldn't buy it. You know,
Yeah.
but I mean, yeah, you're right. They should have started, proving Brock's dominance weeks ago. Brock has that limited schedule, which sucks for telling a story, and Undertaker as well. He has a very, very limited schedule. Just he heals up long enough to come back and do the WrestleMania thing, and then he's back on the injured list. But if he didn't have such a contract the way Brock does, it'd have been nice even if he didn't get the best of the Undertaker. At times they met that they fed him some high quality talent for him to destroy, and quickly. So it doesn't. That's the thing about Brock Lesnar. I don't think he has it in him to go a long match without just showing that he's not really technically sound in this sport. He's brutal and now he can lift you and throw you around like test you like luggage because he looks like a gorilla. That's why I use that.
He's a shaved gorilla. That's exactly what he is.
But yeah, I don't think it's going to go over that way. We'll talk about these predictions, I'm sure, later. But as far as I'm concerned, the streak will stay alive this year one more time, and hopefully it's the last time. Honestly, I honestly I post on Facebook that I was hoping that Brock kills him. Because nobody will really back Brock if he does win, and it's time. It's really time for the Undertaker to go too. It's you're taking up space on the main event show, and it's nice to see you. But hopefully, this Andre the Giant Memorial Battle Royal gimmick will overshadow your streak gimmick, so you can bow out gracefully. Go into the Hall of Fame next year.
Yeah, I kind of feel the same way. The thing about the Brock-Taker feud is that it just doesn't. There just doesn't seem to be any reason why they're fighting other than both guys are on the show at the same time, and they're both big names. Like there's no personal issue between them. I mean, it's Brock wants to break the streak, and Undertaker wants to, continue the streak, but. They do have some personal history, but none of that has ever been talked about during the run up to WrestleMania. Mm-hmm. It's basically just Brock's here, Taker's here, WrestleMania's coming up. Fuck it, and that's kind of it. And nobody believes that Brock's going to win. Nobody believes that Taker's going to lose. There's no drama to it at all. And like you said, the way Taker is beat up. And he always brings his A game for WrestleMania. I'm sure he's going to leave everything in the ring. He's had terrific matches the last 5 or 6 or 7 years running at WrestleMania. But Brock has been very protected in this run that since he came back from MMA. Most of his matches involve like weapons and chair shots and no disqualification stuff. And he's always been in there with a guy who's like a workhorse, like Cena or Triple H or Punk, who can really carry the bulk of the match for him. So whether or not it's even going to be a good match is up in the air.
It'd have been nice if they would have mentioned their history, but it's just like other wrestling promotions, WWE. They do not exist on television. They will not acknowledge them unless they own your library.
Exactly. Then all of a sudden, it's like this wonderful part of history.
And they're not going to tip their hat toward anything that Dana White's done because UFC is that one alternative to watch besides wrestling. Everybody say, "Well, I watch UFC because it's real." All right.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah, at least it's not fake.
Yeah.
So we got Brock versus Taker. They pushed that. That's gonna at least be a very visible match on the show, whether or not it's gonna wind up being a highlight of the show or not. And then we get to a couple of segments that were actually cut out on the Hulu version. That I watched, but I'm running down a recap here. It was Alberto versus Big E, and Alberto pins the Intercontinental Champion.
He sure did.
Clean.
It was a good match. It was a good match.
It sounds from the recap. It sounds like a good match.
Well, you got Alberto Del Rio in there.
Yeah.
I mean, the man knows how to work, and he did. I mean, Big E looked. He showed his ability to overpower him and break his submission holds a few times, and he does the gorilla press like the Ultimate Warrior used to do, where he just presses you and drops you straight down, which is kind of nice. He also does the splash that Ultimate Warrior did, where he bounces off the ring and he comes down and splashes you. So that's two of Warrior's moves that Big E's using.
Yeah. And those are both those are both really cool moves. I like both of those moves. I wish that more big guys would do like a splash type of move. Maybe not as a finish, because there was a time like about 15, 20 years ago when like the splash was sort of the way the power bomb or the choke slam is now, where like everybody used it as a finish. But it's a cool move, and it's a relatively safe move. And it's cool to see Big E doing that running splash off the ropes. So both of these guys are in the Andre Battle Royal.
Which is a shame. It's a shame that you got the Intercontinental Champion in the Battle Royal. You got the United States Champion in a six-man tag. You have the Tag Team Championships being shown on the pre-show. Okay, so it's like, to me, although you are still wrestling on the big card, you're demeaning the belts by not showcasing them.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the attitude about titles in WWE, really in wrestling and major league level wrestling in general, going back to even before WCW kicked the bucket. It's like the Vince Russo booking attitude of like, well, the titles are just props. The titles don't really matter. Well, then why are you giving a guy a prop that nobody cares about? I mean, even if you say, well, because of course, yeah, it's a work sport. They're not really fighting. The champion isn't really the best guy in the company. He's the person that the promoter has put the belt on. Everybody knows that. But if the championships are just props, then why is it okay that nobody gives a shit about him? It should matter whether you consider it like a real championship, like it's a sport, or whether you consider it just something for a guy to carry around to give people something to fight over. It should still be important. I mean, otherwise, why do you even have it?
Yeah, this is what kills me, is like those belts are not being showcased at all. The tag team, I give you, is being showcased. It is being put on the line.
Yeah.
And it is the pre-show, so, guys like us have a network, or guys like me that have a network, I'm not sure, we'll be able to watch that pre-show and at least enjoy the match. I think that's going to be a hell of a tag team match. I love tag team match. But the other ones, which are, in my opinion, more important, the United States has such a deep history, and so does the Intercontinental title have a deep history, but they're not being showcased at all. But which one is? Fucking Divas title is going to be showcased on WrestleMania.
Yeah.
No, that's going to be a sight to see, because you got some primates out there rolling around. But like I said, I'm pretty sure Brie Bella is going to win that. That's kind of in the rumor mill right now, that Brie is probably the number one choice for winning the belt. Although I would like to see something out of Tamina. Finally, she is a snooker, so I'd like to see something out of her. Especially at WrestleMania, because Jimmy was part of WrestleMania 1. So
absolutely,
give her some kind of highlight at WrestleMania would be nice. I would like to see something with Natalya, but she's pretty much regulated to NXT these days and pops in on Total Divas, or she's part of that Divas show, which is horrible.
Yeah, I still haven't watched a full episode of it yet.
I've just seen clips. I will not watch that show, because if I want to see scripted reality TV, I just watch like Duck Dynasty or some other show. I don't really want to see people that I respect, like wrestlers. And I do love women's wrestling. It's one of my favorite type. I don't want to see them doing that ridiculous crap. And knowing that this is filmed, what you're filming was filmed months and months ago, and it's bleeding into live storylines, and I don't like that at all.
Yeah, that's probably the when they try to cross-brand it with the wrestling content, that's kind of the silliest part, because that the show you're watching on E was taped like over the summer, and yet here it is, probably back in the fall, I would guess, for the season that they're airing now, and yet they're fighting about shit that happened on the show, on wrestling shows which are live. It makes no sense at all.
What I don't get it on the Total Divas is apparently, I'm reading this, I didn't actually see it, there was some kind of thing where two people had sex on a bus they were traveling in, and this is all talked about, and the guy is pretty much saying that didn't count because I wasn't erect, and I'm thinking, are you really talking about this kind of stuff? I thought the WWE was PG.
You're right. Total Divas ain't, apparently.
No, it's but if you get younger fans watching that, then they're getting a misrepresentation of what the WWE is. But
yeah, absolutely.
I talked about the Divas. I talked about the Divas match because that's a segue into the next one. See?
Yeah, that's real good. That's real good. Yeah, well, actually, there was, I think, before the Divas match was that awesome Bray Wyatt promo.
Oh yeah.
Which to me, and we've talked about how great his promos have been for like the last couple of months, but this was the go home promo for Bray and John Cena, and I thought he just killed it. I mean, I thought it was a great promo. I loved that moment when he turned to the camera and said, "Do I have your attention now?"
With a big smile.
Yeah, it was like Alec Baldwin and Glenn Ross, and I just thought it was an awesome promo. I am so loving the Cena Bray Wyatt feud. It's, other than the Daniel Bryan stuff in the main event, it's the part of the show that I'm the most looking forward to seeing. It's the match that I'm anticipating by far. Of all the undercard matches, Cena versus Bray Wyatt is the one I'm definitely the most excited and most interested in. And a lot of that has to do with how awesome Bray Wyatt's promos have been. I mean, you really believe that he could beat John Cena on Sunday, and that it would be important, that it wouldn't just be, well, Cena loses and then he comes back out the next night on Raw and he's just regular happy guy Cena again, which, I mean, that might still happen, but they're playing it so well that it really feels like an important match.
My wife drives me nuts with this. I tell her I do a show. I tell her I do a show at 4 o'clock, and she's sending me a text. I'm like, knock it off.
Are you doing that show?
I get a full body massage tonight. She needs a practice dummy because she's going to school for that, so I get a full body massage tonight.
Who wants the body massage?
Oh, you know I do.
Body massage. So yeah, there was that awesome Bray Wyatt promo, and then there was the Divas match where it was Summer Rae and Natalya. The match wasn't really a whole lot, but where it was officially announced, in case we were wondering what was even going on with this Divas match at WrestleMania, that it's going to be a one-fall match.
Mm-hmm.
So basically every diva on the main roster is going to be in the ring at once, and the first pinfall wins the match and wins the title.
Yeah, you're going to see a lot of people dragging girls off of one another by their hair in this match, because since it is one fall, you're going to see everybody trying to get that pinfall. And how do you keep track of that? I mean, I did that War Games. There's 12 guys running around.
Yeah.
That first one, there's 12 guys running around. It's a submission match, and you're trying to pay attention to every little thing. It's like, there could be a submission happening behind you, and you're paying attention to the thing in front of you. It's definitely going to have more than one ref, because one ref wouldn't be able to handle that, and he's going to miss something.
Yeah, it's basically like trying to officiate a battle royal.
Mm-hmm.
Where there's only one finish. I mean, at least with a battle royal, you're like, oh, he's over the top. Okay. I mean, when there's like a dozen people in there and you have to make sure you catch the finish. So yeah, I have no idea. I'm going to trust your judgment and sort of lean toward Brie Bella.
Mm-hmm.
But I have like, just from the booking, there's no possible way to tell. Like, I mean, they seem like, the only thing that you can say for sure, I would say, is that AJ's losing the title.
Yeah.
But I don't know to who or in what situation or what happens coming out of it. I have no idea. But we'll talk about that in a little bit. Next after that was the Triple H Stephanie promo in the ring, and eventually Batista, who is sort of a babyface tonight because it was his hometown.
Mm-hmm.
And then eventually Orton came out too, and they had their big back and forth. I actually thought there was a really effective moment here when Triple H and Stephanie played this video package of all the people Triple H has beaten,
Mm-hmm.
and of course it was done like from the perspective of like Triple H as like the heel authority figure, and he made himself look like he was the guy who had come out and beaten all these guys, and it was designed to make Triple H look like this awesome killer, and it was very biased and very very over the top in favor of Triple H because he's the heel and his wife was narrating it and everything. I thought the whole thing was fine. And then Batista comes out and says, "Hey, I noticed I wasn't in that.
Mm-hmm.
Could that be because you've never beaten me?" You know?
Is that the only thing you can come up with, Dave? Come on now.
Yeah. So, but it's nice to see Batista showing a little bit of personality finally after 3 months and after being such a dud when he first came back that he almost forced him to flush WrestleMania's main event down the toilet. It's nice to see him, you know, showing some, not that I blame him for that. I blame the booking for that and the creative for that, but it's nice to see him really finally sort of coming alive and getting into the program here.
Well, it sucked because I watched the press conference, the WrestleMania 30 press conference at 11 o'clock this morning.
Yeah.
Watched that live, and Batista came out and he spoke, and he had his notes. He said, you know, he's reading them. He's like, I don't know, I wouldn't talk like this. I don't know who wrote this. Whoever wrote this stuff should be fired. I'm just gonna. And he just starts to freelance, and it was very painful. He even admitted to being very uncomfortable. He don't like these things. And it showed. It really did. It was sad. Yeah, we were talking about it in the network on the network's fan page of how hurtful it was, not for just him, but for all of us. But no, he just was a dullard, honestly.
Wow. Yeah, I didn't catch that, but boy, well, you know, there's an old saying: if you can't do it, don't do it.
Mm-hmm.
And if Batista can't talk, he should not be placed in front of people to talk. You know, I mean, I know he's one of the guys in the main event of the big show, but if you had to know ahead of time that, you know, it's not the guy's strong suit to come out. I mean, I think he's okay in certain situations talking. He's okay in the ring. He's okay when there's back and forth with a guy. But, you know, Batista's never been the guy you would want to go out and, you know, put a microphone in his hand and go, okay, go sell the pay-per-view, Batista. You know, he's not really your guy. They probably shouldn't have put him in that situation to begin with. You know, have him come out and be like the last guy and get in Triple H's face or get in Randy Orton's face, just kind of, you know, a man of few words type of thing.
What was kind of insulting to me was during the press conference, and I think he meant it as a joke, but he had actually owned up to, he's like, I had a little time between movies, so I decided to come back and win the title. I was like, oh yeah, that's nice. You know, that just makes you look like what I've always thought was, you know, don't go away for 4 years and think you should come back right at the top of the game because you don't deserve it.
Yeah. Well, look, he's been a heel for the last 2 months, pretty much.
Mm-hmm.
But last night he was kind of a babyface, partially because it was in D.C. where he's from, and he came out with a Georgetown T-shirt on and everything,
sure.
and part of it is because he's been getting in Triple H's face lately, but it's just confusing, you know. The more complicated you make, most in my opinion as a wrestling fan, the more complicated you make wrestling stories, for the most part, that is the worse they get, you know. Mm-hmm. It doesn't have to be that complicated. If Batista's a heel, then he should be a heel, and he should be a heel until you turn him babyface. And if he comes out in Washington, D.C., and his hometown fans are cheering him, if he's a heel, he should find some way of getting those hometown fans to boo him, you know, like Chris Jericho did when they did Monday Nitro in Canada that one time, you know. I mean, that was brilliant. He comes out, and it's Toronto, I think, is where they were holding the show, and it was the first time they'd had a big WCW like Monday Nitro in Canada, and Jericho came out, and everybody was just cheering him to the rafters because he's their Canadian guy, and he had that crowd booing him in like 2 minutes because he said he's so glad he moved to the United States because Canada sucks. And, you know, and I mean, to me that's what a true heel does. And if Batista is going to be the heel or one of the heels in this match, that's what he should have done last night. He should have healed on that crowd, because otherwise it just makes it seem, because he's a babyface last night, then he's back to being a heel at the press conference today, saying that he just took some time off to come win the title, so he's being the cocky prick heel, you know.
Well, I look at it as you got Randy Orton, who is the suck up. He's the bad guy, but he's with the authority. He's the suck up kiss ass. Um, and then you got Batista, who's also the bad guy, but he doesn't like the authority, so he gets up in their face, and he's an asshole toward them. He's an asshole toward Randy, but he's still a bad guy. And then you got Daniel Bryan, maybe. You got Daniel Bryan, who is just the good guy in the picture, and that's what it needs at this point. So you got the three levels. So you got the suck up good guy. He's almost too nice sometimes.
Yeah.
He's kissing ass with Stephanie and Trips, and then Batista's just not going to have any of that. And Bryan, wow. That was amazing last night. When I even say his name, it's like I just finished watching Raw, and I'm like, you go get him,
Yeah. Yeah. Well, we'll talk about that final segment in a few minutes because I agree. I thought that was really well done. So next on the show was they did an 8-man tag to push what is now a 4-way for the tag titles, and it's Los Matadores, the Real Americans, Ryback, and then the Usos as the defending champions. That's the WrestleMania match, and that's the pre-show match. But on Raw last night, it was an 8-man with the faces versus the heels. It was the Matadors and the Usos versus the Real Americans and Ryback and Axel. I thought this was a pretty good match. The crowd was definitely into it. I thought it was a little. It wasn't like a brilliant technical wrestling match. People were kind of in and out a lot, but I kind of dug it.
Yeah, you can get a lot of good fan reaction from those teams, except for Ryback.
Yeah.
But you got the Los Matadores with the Ole, you got the Usos with the Usos, yeah. And then you got the Real Americans with the We the People chant, which was very, very loud last night. And it's like, it's funny because the commentators actually made mention to it. It's like, oh, the crowd is mad, We the People chants going on, and it's like, really? Are you just now hearing that? Because it's been going on for quite some time now.
Oh yeah.
I like what they're going. It doesn't look like they're going to split the Real Americans up. I think that at this point they look stronger than ever. So why really split them up? I think in this whole matchup I watched last night, the only person I felt bad for was Ryback. Because he has been regulated this far down the ladder from last year.
Oh yeah,
it is crazy. At least Fandango, who they mentioned last night, his song got over. He didn't get over. He never got over, but his song got over.
Right.
But he never rose. He was never shoved down our throats or pushed to the top like Ryback was, and then ultimately fail. And look where you are. And it's like, and every time I see him, that's what I think. It's like you couldn't cut it at the top tier, and this is where you will be until WWE just is done with you, because that's your next step. I don't think you're going to get that push again. I don't think it's going to happen.
No, I think he got that push the first time because of his size and his look, and like you say, once he got up to that level, he was sort of exposed as, oh shit, he probably doesn't belong this high on the card. Mm-hmm. So where he's at now is sort of where he probably should have been all along, at least until he developed up to a point that he could work on the top of the card and then have a decent match. But yeah, I tell you what I really liked about the match last night, the 8-man, was I loved the way the finish was booked. Not because I'm crazy about that switcheroo finish, because the finish was the Matadors swapped places when the referee's back was turned. So that the Matador who was injured was out, and the Matador who was fresh was in, but nobody saw the switch. And then when Swagger leaned over him, he got small packaged for the pin. I'm not always crazy about that finish, but I love the fact that they used that for Los Matadores last night to sort of plant a possibility in the mind of the audience of this is how these guys could win the match on Sunday. I thought it was a really great, really subtle way of building up Los Matadores, because those sort of guys, those are, you said that Ryback and Axel are sort of the team that sticks out. And I agree. They're both, the Matadors and Ryback are not quite at the level of the Usos, or certainly not the Real Americans, because fans actually seem to give a shit about both of those teams. But the Matadors, when I saw that they were going to be in the tag title match, my first reaction was, and nothing against either guy, but my first reaction was, well, shit, did they release Goldust and Cody? Like, why? If you're going to have a four-way for the tag titles, why are Goldust and Cody in the Battle Royal? Why are they not in the tag title match? Why'd they put Los Matadores in the tag title match? And it just didn't make any sense to me why those guys were there, other than just as cannon fodder for the other teams. But by having Los Matadores use their wits and a little bit of deception to win the match, by getting the pinfall on one of the really hot teams in the match, that's like the path to victory. You know, now you can see, aha, these guys could win this match. You know, and I thought that was really smart.
See, now when I see the finish, I saw it as what we like to call like almost a moral victory. It's an empty victory. It's a way that the good guys get over, but in the fans' eyes, it hasn't cheapened any of the other teams by losing that match, because it was a cheated victory. So I look at that as that's what they're doing. They don't want any of the other teams to look weak going into WrestleMania, so they just did a little cute switcheroo cheat win with the Matadors, which that's the way I see it when I look at that.
Yeah, and you're right. I mean, I think they probably did it that way so that the Real Americans or any of the other teams wouldn't have to look weak. And it was a creative way to do that, because apparently they've completely forgotten how to book build-ups to big matches any other way than just have the guys fight each other over and over and over again before the show. I mean, I remember when I was a young wrestling fan, like if two guys had a match at a big pay-per-view coming up, they hardly ever even got in the same ring with each other. Unless they might have like a tag team match on opposite sides, like on a Saturday night's main event or something. But you know, they certainly never wrestled each other in like a big high-profile match before the pay-per-view. And now it seems like that's the only way they know how to book things. You know, I mean, shit. The main event of this show we're talking about was Batista versus Randy Orton.
The original WrestleMania one.
Yeah, 6 days before WrestleMania, they just give this match away. It's like, well, fuck it. You know, people will still buy the show.
That's the best you're going to get too, because the moves they pulled off in that match, that's what they're going to do at WrestleMania. They pretty much threw out what they can do at that match.
Yeah, that's true. They did all the big spots. Orton did the second rope DDT thing, and I mean, they pretty much did everything that you would expect them to do. Yeah, I don't get it, but it's really scary to think if they hadn't corrected course and booked Daniel Bryan into that program. I mean, there would be no reason for anybody to care about any of that. Like, if you don't end the last Raw before WrestleMania with Daniel Bryan as the hero and the potential, you know, new champion, it's just scary to think if they had really been that determined to run with Batista versus Orton as the main event. I mean, Jesus.
The only thing I could have done, the only thing I would have done was, if I had no other alternative, the fans were not going to get behind Batista, then I would have written something really quick where it looks like Triple H is buddying up with Batista, and to make him the new golden boy, Randy Orton gets jealous, things start turning around, and Randy Orton starts becoming that good guy, almost the anti-hero the way Steve Austin was. He's still, you know, that vicious viper prick guy, but now he's against everybody, and I think Randy Orton would have got over if that would have happened, because Randy Orton, I think there was momentum almost shifting that way. I mean, he did a few things in the last couple of weeks where he got pops. I mean, last night during the match, he gets right up in the audience and he throws his hands out, and the audience responds to him. They don't boo him; they cheer him.
Yeah, and he would have had motivation too, because you know, Triple H and Stephanie. Even before Batista ever came back, they were always sort of like, well, we don't really believe in you, Randy. You know, so if he had done like some kind of a turn leading into WrestleMania, there would have been, you know, some motivation behind that. That would have been better than trying to shove Batista as a babyface down people's throats. I'll tell you what. But I'm glad that they went the obvious and the right road and decided to bring Daniel Bryan into it, because I mean I shudder to think what WrestleMania would have been like if they hadn't have done that. So next on Raw was another tag team match between guys who are in the Andre Battle Royal, two of which were the hottest tag team in wrestling 6 months ago, and now are kind of just hanging around, just doing stuff. Cody and Goldust. They had a match with Fandango and Damian Sandow, and they won the match. And it's just a shame to see how they've kind of forgotten about Fandango, and especially Sandow, because Sandow, to me, has potential to be a really great upper mid-card, maybe even main event heel at some point, and he's just kind of floundering out there.
Yeah, I like Sandow a lot, I think.
Yeah.
That when they did away with his money in the bank or briefcase, when they got rid of that, made him lose it, I thought that was a travesty of justice. I'm stealing that from Gorilla Monsoon. It was a travesty of justice. And I think he lost momentum at that point. You know, as long as he carried that briefcase around, the potential that he was going to rise up to be that champion was always there, you know, for you to think about. But once John Cena pretty much took the fluff out of that.
Yes, to say the least. And you know, I mean, to take it back a little bit to what Triple H was saying in his promo earlier in the show, and I get that he was being a heel, and I actually liked a lot of Triple H's promo there. But he's blaming things on the fans that the fans kind of blame. Maybe not on him. Some people might blame it on him, and that might not be completely fair, because he's not, you know, he's not the only person in charge of creative in the company. I'm sure he has a great deal of influence, but he's not. Triple H isn't the one writing the show every week. But you know, he said, you know, what was that thing you were doing last year after WrestleMania? You were doing the Fandango thing, and you forgot all about that, and that's a shame, because that's a good kid, and he could be a solid player. And on the one hand, I think, okay, he's being a heel, and he's saying things because he wants people to boo him, and that's what he should be doing. That's really smart. But on the other hand, I couldn't help but think, you know, the reason why people lost interest in Fandango is because he didn't have anything to do. He wasn't working with anybody. He didn't have a program with anybody after the Jericho thing at WrestleMania last year. It's not his fault, and it's not our fault as fans if people stop cheering for Fandango, or stop cheering for Zack Ryder, or for Dolph Ziggler, or for any of the other guys who got really hot and then didn't have anything to do. You can't cheer for a guy if he's not on the show.
It's like the WWE want to punish you if you've made a star out of yourself, like Zack Ryder. They've done this so many times in the past with WCW wrestlers that come over and then they just make them look weak. And when they were strong in WCW. I mean, look at R-Truth. R-Truth was really strong in TNA, and anywhere he went, he was champion over there, and then comes over here, he can't touch the belt. Christian as well. He went over to TNA, and he was champion over there, but comes over here, and sure, he was champion briefly. And I think that was a pity thing. They just wanted to keep Edge's memory alive. You know, it was kind of like your last hats off to Edge and what he accomplished. But Christian definitely isn't championship material, not WWE. It's crazy.
Yeah, I mean, like I say, Triple H is saying that in the ring, on the show. It's part of his heel act, and it's smart that he should say that to try and get people to hate him because he's the bad guy. But you know, when you look at it from a real life point of view, it's not the fans' fault that the Fandango thing died out. It's the company's fault because they had a hot guy and they didn't do anything with him. And
I think they stuck him with it. Honestly, I think gimmicks aren't needed for every single wrestler that you put in that ring. The best wrestlers there are in the WWE go by their names, really. They have little nicknames that they've gained along the way, like Randy Orton or John Cena, but that's who they are. They don't have any stupid little gimmicks. Johnny Curtis, get out there and wrestle, man. Show them what you can do.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. Um, so let's go on to further in the show here. The next was Bray Wyatt versus R-Truth, who we were just talking about. Um, Pretty much just a squash for
Mm.
Bray, which I didn't mind. I like seeing Bray look strong. He's going up against the top guy in the company at the biggest show of the year, so he's got to look like a beast in there, and he really looked good against R-Truth. R-Truth put him over really well. And then they did a really cool segment uh, after that match where the Wyatts did their usual pose with Bray on his knees and Rowan and Harper standing behind him, and then out of the darkness beyond the spotlight steps another guy wearing a sheet mask, which of course turns out to be John Cena, and he takes the mask off and clears him out of the ring, and I thought that was a really good segment.
I agree with you. I'm not a big Cena fan, but I thought his appearance out of the darkness looked really good because you didn't see him until he was like right up on them.
Yeah.
And then he had that moment. Excuse me. And I think that they held out a little too long. I thought it was funny him and Big Red doing the with the sheet mask looking back and forth at each
Yeah.
other. Cena was pretty much mocking him. He was like he would knock his head sideways and everything. But in my opinion, you stared at him way too long, especially Luke and Rowan. They're standing right beside this jarhead and they don't realize it's him. I mean, the
Yeah.
mask only goes up so far, and he's got big old monkey ears.
Yeah, I agree. I think they stared at each other way too long. But the idea was a clever idea, and it was well pulled off, I thought. And again, that's other than the stuff going on in the main event. The Wyatt Cena stuff has just been my favorite part of the show, and I really can't wait for that match.
Hmm.
Um,
And didn't touch him either.
that's
he got
right.
the best to go to, but Wyatt got away. See, and I got
That's
like,
right.
which is
See,
cool.
so they know how to
Oh,
do
man.
it.
Hmm.
They know how to do it. They just it's like, oh, fuck it. Some guys will get their hands on each other and some won't. But you can't tell me that it doesn't make you want to see the match more when they do like a tease like that, where Cena gets him up on his shoulders and he's about to hit him with the finish, and then he wriggles off and escapes. Because now you haven't seen it yet. You have to see the match. You have to see what happens. I don't understand why they don't book more of their big match programs like that.
Yeah, Cena's their top guy, and I think that they realize there's a lot of potential in this match, especially with raising Bray Wyatt up at this point, because you got your hardcore Cena fans. They're going to want Cena to win. They're going to follow Cena, and they're going to chant for Cena. And those who don't like Cena, you can guarantee that they do like Wyatt. It's not like he's facing an opponent that nobody cares about. When you
Right.
talk about the three big matches going on at WrestleMania, to me, this is the one where you're going to have all the fans interested. Yes, the world title match is going to be interesting if you have Bryan in it, but they really don't give a rat's ass about the other two opponents. This is one where everybody's invested in both opponents one way or the other, and it's to me that right there is the most interesting match of the night. It could get more interesting, and depending upon which way it goes, which side of the quarter gets flipped, Triple H or I'd still be interested in Triple H going to the main event, but who cares? But I think this is the one that I rank as the must-see match of WrestleMania so far. It's the one I can't wait to happen.
Well, that's a really good point you bring up about how the fans are sort of invested in both guys. And I just thought of something too, is that the Cena versus Wyatt's stuff is of the three big matches. The whole main event thing with Triple H and Daniel Bryan and Orton and Batista, and then Cena versus Wyatt, and then Brock versus Undertaker. That's the match. The Cena versus Wyatt match is the one that has worked the best creatively and has been the most consistently built. Because they've been consistent with Brock versus Undertaker. It's just been ice cold and nobody cares. And the main event clusterfuck is really hot and people care about it, but my God, what a rocky road to get there. I mean, they've changed direction so many times and added things and changed things. It's just been, amazing if you look back at the timeline of, okay, they changed this and they changed this and it was supposed to be this and then it became this. Like, it's been so inconsistent and crazy because they've had to constantly adjust because fans didn't give a shit about other stuff they wanted to do. But with the Wyatt versus Cena thing, it's been pretty much a straight line from start to finish, and it's been great. And it's nice to see that as a fan, as someone like a bitchy internet wrestling fan who is constantly ragging on WWE for their undisciplined storytelling and for trying to push people down fans' throats that they don't want and ignoring people that the fans do want. It's nice to see them with a big major program like Cena versus Bray Wyatt, where they stuck to their guns. They obviously planned out a really good story from the start. You can tell there's been long-term planning. You can tell they were building to a particular point, and it's gone pretty much without a hitch. And it's like I say, it's other than the main event, it's the match I'm really looking forward to seeing most. And let's go ahead and talk about Cena's promo, because after the stuff in the ring, they had another Divas segment, which we already kind of talked about. So let's go ahead and talk about Cena's backstage promo with Renee Young, because I thought that was one of the best promos that John Cena has cut in years. It was really short. It was backstage. He wasn't playing to the crowd or doing any of the stuff that Cena kind of tends to do sometimes that gets on people's nerves. He was serious. He was straight to the camera. And man, that that final line when he says, Bray Wyatt comes out here talking about change. I'll give you change. I'm gonna change the way you walk when I put my foot up your ass. And then he walks out. Great. It was amazing. It was the best Cena promo. It was the best Cena promo I've seen in years. And I mean, kudos to Cena for that. I mean, amazing.
Yeah, it was kind of like the whole experience of John Cena last night was him facing. He's getting ready to face his fear. He's shaking off that fear. He's stepping up. He's gonna man up and face Bray Wyatt on his own terms and not be scared of him. It's kind of like that last push of bravery by John Cena before he heads into WrestleMania. So I think that him coming out and saying he was scared was smart. But let's not make him look terrified by the Wyatt family. Let's say I'm unnerved by the way they act and the things they can do. I've never seen any guys like this before, but I'm a man. I'm going to stand up, do what I got to do, and I'm going to try my best for you fans to settle this one way or the other, but I'm going to go out there and give it my best, That's all I can do. I'm John Cena. I think Bray Wyatt's going to wrestle circles around me, but because he's got that wrestling lineage, but who knows? I might pull off a move or two that you've never seen before. And there are moves that John Cena has had. He's probably just out of practice with them. But when he was like the prototype, as I've always said, you do so much more when you're coming up than when you actually get to the big show that they allow you to do.
Yeah, and well, even ever since he's been up and been the top guy in the WWE, every once in a while it seems like he pulls out a move that you didn't expect him to do, like when he had that big match with CM Punk last year on Raw before WrestleMania, when him and Punk had sort of like their final big blow-off match on Raw, where he finished it with a Hurricane Rana. He Hurricane Rana'd Punk off the top rope, and then hit him with the F5, hit him with the AA, what used to be the FU, and pinned him. So Cena is able to sort of mix up the moveset here and there when he feels like it. I have a feeling it's going to be a really good match. Not just well built and intriguing, but I have a feeling it's going to be a good match, because you're right. Bray has a family history. I think he's always been solid in the ring, and Cena can bring it when the chips are down. And Cena's had great matches with almost everybody on the show from time to time. So I think it's going to be a terrific match. Next on Raw was the Shield versus Kane segment. It was Kane versus Roman Reigns, who won an app poll to get the match with Kane. And they kind of went back and forth for a few minutes until the Outlaws came out, and then the rest of the Shield came out, and they sort of did their final standoff on Raw before WrestleMania. So that's going to be the match. There is the Mania match is a 6-man. It's Kane and the Outlaws versus the Shield.
Yeah, this is a story. I think it came quickly. I think that they completely did a turnaround when it came to what they were going to do with the Shield. They found that we could turn them all baby faces, and they'll all get over with the crowd. We can definitely do that. So they throw Corporate Kane in there, and do that little. It was brief, but I think that it works. That telling that story of the Shield finally is standing up for themselves and not doing what they're being told to do by the corporate. That we're Shield. We don't do anything anybody tells us to do. We do what we want to do. And you got the Outlaws, and that makes sense because they're Triple H's buddies. So you got the corporate Outlaws and Corporate Kane, and I guess his name is definitely Corporate Kane. I wonder if I looked him up in the Superstar section if it would be listed.
Does it say Corporate Kane?
I'm not sure.
Actually, I noticed the lower third text when he came out last night still just said Kane. So I guess he's not officially Corporate Kane, but everybody calls him. Some people call him Libertarian Kane. Mm-hmm. Because in real life, Glenn Jacobs is a big outspoken libertarian, and now that he's wrestling in basically just a pair of slacks, it's Libertarian Kane. So yeah, I'm kind of looking forward to that match too. I like the Shield. I think the Outlaws have done well as they in their role when they've come back. Kane is one of those big guys who just when you think he's just had it and there's not a good match left in the guy, he shows you something that he can still bring it in the ring. The Corporate Kane thing I think is all right. I mean, I still think there are way too many authority figures on the show. I mean, Kane's the director of operations, plus the COO, plus the majority owner or the principal owner, Stephanie McMahon, plus the general managers of both shows. It's like, Jesus Christ, how many people are in charge of this show?
Yeah, Kane should really just have, if he's going to be in that group, he should just be like the enforcer. He's the one who goes out, and if you're not going to do what the authority tells you, then he's going to go out there and, he's basically the wrestler, the Punisher for the authority.
Yeah,
and that's really what he's doing these days. Anyways, is he's wrestling every week again. I really honestly thought he was done, but it was just a couple of weeks he's back in the ring. But I like the Corporate King gimmick. It's because it's just different. I think the whole Kane gimmick ran its course. Not everything can withstand a gimmick like the Undertaker had, and even the Undertaker switched up his gimmick from time to time.
Yeah.
But I like that he's grown his hair back, a little bit, and he definitely looks in good physical condition and can still go out there and work. So, but we talk about Kane, and we call him Liberal Kane. Do you think that in the future we're going to be seeing Glenn Jacobs in some kind of political office?
You've heard. I've heard rumors that there are groups where he's from, or at least where he lives now. That I think he lives in. Is it Tennessee or is it Kentucky? It's one of the sort of.
Same difference.
Yeah. What's the fucking difference? Tennessee, Kentucky, one of those. But
the opinions of Doc Gregory do not actually represent the show we are watching currently. I'm from I was born in Nashville, Tennessee, so I poke fun.
that whole block, sort of right next to the Mississippi River, But yeah, and people have been pushing him to run. I don't know. I wouldn't be surprised if he ran for something. I don't think he's going to win just because. Well, first of all, if he runs as a libertarian, he's going to lose because libertarians don't win elections. If he runs as a Republican, he might have more of a shot. But I just think the wrestling thing is going to hurt him too much.
It hurt Linda. I mean, she's got all the money in the world, and that's what a lot of times it takes to win the election is just money because the system's broken.
Yeah.
But he don't have that kind of capital. I mean, sure, he's got plenty of capital. He can raise stuff, but. Yeah, and unless you're like an independent like Jesse Ventura was, and I'm not sure. I think he was considered liberal more toward the end of his political career.
Yeah.
But I'm pretty sure he considers himself an independent, and he's the only one that escaped really that stigma of wrestling. I think because he just came from a generation where it was still very well respected.
And he was running in Minnesota, which has a very long-standing pro wrestling tradition where there were. I mean, in Minnesota, it's a little different. Minnesota is sort of like pro wrestling is still seen by a lot of people the same way it's kind of seen in Canada, where there's that Minnesota's where the AWA was. There have been great Olympic wrestlers from Minnesota, so it's just the perception is a little bit different than say someone from the South would think of pro wrestling. It's just kind of like that's like a hick type of thing, or it's like a redneck type of thing. Yeah, I'll tell you what, Glenn Jacobs can give a hell of a speech.
Yes, you can.
I watched one of his speeches. I think you linked it to me, Doc, on one of the libertarian conventions from a few years ago. I'm not a libertarian. I think libertarianism is kind of nutty and goofy, and a lot of libertarians that I that I know. I mean, I know some libertarians in real life, and they're lovely people. But there are libertarians on the internet that I've encountered who are kind of assholes. So I just don't get the politics of it at all. It's not my viewpoint. But he gave a hell of a speech at that convention. And it made me think, like, why don't they let him cut more of his own promos on the wrestling show? Because he's a good talker. You wouldn't think of it. Kane has had his moments throughout the years where he's said something funny or said something cool in an interview, but you don't think of Kane as like a great talker for the most part. But that speech that Glenn Jacobs gave at that Libertarian convention was excellent. And it's like, isn't anybody who who he works for watching this? Can't you see that this guy can talk? But yeah, I don't know. I think he'll probably run, but I don't think he'll ever win anything. And like maybe like a state level thing or a local thing. But I mean, if he runs like for the Senate or for the House of Representatives, I'm not sure if he has much of a shot.
Well, he has a murder background. He's killed.
That's true.
Yeah, I mean.
That criminal record alone is going to.
He's got a criminal record.
Yeah, and
sets people on fire, and
he's killed. He killed Paul Bearer like 3 times before he finally finished the job.
Murderer!
Justice for Paul Bearer. So okay, let's go ahead. Let's talk about Piper's Pit, because Piper's Pit was last night, and they used it to push the Andre Battle Royal. They brought out Miz and Sheamus and Titus and Dolph, and then finally Ray came out, and Big Show came out last, and they just kind of had a brawl in the ring to push the Battle Royal. I thought it was all right. I really liked how Piper started the fight by poking Miz in the eyes.
Loved it. He got a real one in there too.
Yeah, I thought that was cool because he sort of, because it's a little bit a meta commentary, because you know what's going to happen. You've seen wrestling before. You know these guys are going to start fighting to put over the Battle Royal, and Piper kind of walks around and says, "Look, I've been around a long time. I know how this is going to go, so let me go ahead and give you some help." And then he pokes Miz in the eyes to start the fight. I thought it was great.
Piper looked a little rough last night.
He's old.
Yeah, he's showing his age. A lot of people were griping because you got Piper on Raw, you're going to have Hogan on SmackDown, and it's like, I don't get what you're trying to tell me there, It's like, we're not at WrestleMania yet, and I was actually talking to a guy about this, that it would be really nice if you could get Bob Orton, Paul Orndorff, Jimmy Snuka, Mr. T, Hulk Hogan, get them all back together and reunite them just to showcase the main event, the guys that were in the original main event of WrestleMania at this WrestleMania. Don't give them any wrestling time or anything like that. Just basically honor them for headlining the very first WrestleMania. Since, I think you got Piper and Hogan and T going to be there, so it wouldn't be hard to reach out to Randy's dad.
Right.
Snuka, as long as he's not going to jail for any reopened murder trials, could probably make it. And Paul Orndorff's still kicking it, so you can get him too.
Yeah, I would love that. I would love that so much, and it would make sense because Hogan's there anyway as the host, and yeah, Mr. T's going in the Hall of Fame. I kind of thought they might do something like that at the Hall of Fame ceremony this year, but they haven't mentioned anything about that. And you would think if they were going to do that, they would at least want to announce it so that people would have one more reason to watch the show. But whether they do it at the Hall of Fame or at the actual big show, yeah, that sort of thing would be awesome, because I love when they do that. When they acknowledge their past and their heritage. That's one of the reasons why the Hall of Fame, why I actually care about the Hall of Fame. It's a worked Hall of Fame. They just put people in who they want to put in. But just the idea of having the old wrestlers come out and tell stories and get a standing ovation from the fans and get a payday, and I mean, it's nice to see, and
What do you think about them inducting Scott Hall as Razor Ramon and not Scott Hall?
it's a little weird.
It is.
It's a little weird because they've inducted other guys in the past without inducting them as like one particular gimmick. You know what I mean? I'm not. Yeah, I don't know. I mean, because everybody knows it's Scott Hall,
Right.
and he
Right.
even wrestled in the WWE as Scott Hall when he came back when the NWO came in 2002.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I mean, of course, his glory years as a wrestler were probably the Razor Ramon years, but I mean, everybody knows it's fucking Scott Hall.
No, you never seen the old AWA matches with him and Kurt Hennig, the big Scott Hall?
Big Scott
Yeah.
Hall. Yeah.
He had an awesome Brady do and that cool freaking 70s mustache.
Yes. He was like I mean, he looked a lot like Magnum TA actually.
He
back
did.
then. Yeah.
Right, he did.
Yeah.
I can't wait for his speech because it seems like to come out going, "Hey, yo, stick man, listen up, Chico. It's about time that the bad guy got into the Hall of Fame."
Yes. He should just do the whole thing in character as Razor Ramon. Come out with like his hair wet and kind of do like the surfing thing when he comes out, and yeah, that would be great. It's cool that him and Jake are both going in the same year because of the they're both connected to DDP and they're both sort of kind of got their shit together in the last couple of years, and it's nice. I'm glad that Scott's going in. It is a little weird that he's going in as Razor Ramon.
Yeah, if I had to induct, I would like to see DDP induct Jake. Razor. I really have 1, 2, 3 Kid maybe.
Yeah. Well,
Bring
I mean,
X-Pac in.
would they bring Nash in to do it?
Nash should be a good person to do it. And I imagine if they call him, he'd come. But you don't want to. Honestly, I've met the man. And you don't want to inflate his ego any bigger than it already is. It's insane. He's so rude to people too. It's crazy.
That's what I've heard. I always like him when I see him in things, but then I hear people like you have mentioned to me before, like in person, he can be just a huge dick.
Mm-hmm.
So
it's not really toward me, I mean, I know
Yeah.
It's not. I know you've been there, and I haven't been there, and you have that right to be a little smug about it. But you don't go out there and you don't go out there and mistreat the fans or throw your eyes up like you're disgusted for being here. Because I think that's disrespectful to the people that are paid to come to see you. That's where I drew the line.
Yeah, I agree. If you don't want to go, don't go. I mean, it's not like Kevin Nash needs the money. I don't think. I mean, he did very well, and as far as anything I've ever heard, he saved his money, and he's doing just fine. If you don't want to go to a signing or to a little indie show, then just don't go.
Yeah.
Don't go and then act like a jerk about it. But yeah, so who knows? I haven't heard who's inducting Razor, but yeah, X-Pac would be good too. They could always have fucking Triple H do it, I guess.
But I'd be shocked. I'd be shocked to see X-Pac because he's been in porn.
That's not PG.
That's not PG at all.
That's not PG at all.
Not represent.
No. Okay, so let's talk about the Raw main event, and then we'll get on with our predictions and our legend. The main event of Raw was what was originally the main event of WrestleMania this year, without the title on the line, of course. Orton versus Batista. It was a no disqualification match. Didn't really have a finish because the finish was Daniel Bryan coming out of the crowd and beating the piss out of Triple H. And then clearing the ring, hitting the big knee on. I think he hit the knee on Batista. I think.
Yes.
Then did he hit it on Orton too? Or no, he drop kicked Orton.
They drop kicked him off the ring apron.
But yeah, so he cleared the ring, and the show ends with the whole place chanting yes, and Daniel Bryan standing triumphant in the ring. I thought that whole thing was so well done.
Mm-hmm.
I loved that Bryan coming in was a surprise. The announcers acted like they had no idea it was coming. He didn't come down the ramp. He didn't have his entrance music or any of that bullshit. He came in from behind, out of the crowd, jumped on Triple H, and like before you even knew what was happening, there it was. I thought it was great.
Yeah, you knew something was going on because the crowd started going crazy, and it's like you knew it had to be Bryan, and And before you knew it, he had already come over the barricade. He's already beating on Triple H for even the cameras flash over and show, that he's already all over Triple H. Like, this is
Yeah.
going on. So Randy Orton comes out and tries to pull him off. He fought him the first time, and then Randy ripped his shirt.
Yeah.
Saying, how dare you rip that shirt? But yeah, threw him against the steel chairs and in the ring, and then Batista, of course, spears Randy Orton, and that kind of gave the upper hand, because when he picked up Bryan fired loose on him, and that gave him one-on-one time with Triple H, with Randy Orton, and with Batista, and he got the best of all three of them. But he was fresh. He was fresh. He hasn't wrestled in 2 weeks.
That's right. They kept him off TV last week, as you said they should.
Yes.
And they did. And it worked so well. The crowd there that night was hot for it. It made it made you feel excited to see the show. Made Bryan look strong without making the other guys look weak, which is something that can be done. It doesn't make it look like it's a foregone conclusion. You can't really predict what's going to happen, but man, I thought it was awesome. I love the fact that he just came in out of the crowd, that it was sudden and sort of like, oh, what's going on? Because like I was thinking as I was watching that. Like one of the silliest things about modern pro wrestling is when people do run-ins and they get their fucking entrance music as they're running in. That just is so insane to me. It's, like you're running out to fuck up someone else's match. Why are you getting your entrance music played? It makes no sense at all. And but it's just it's just part of the show now. It's just one of the things that they just do. But last night they didn't do it, and it was awesome.
Yeah, the worst run-in in wrestling history has to be ECW's Sandman.
Oh my God! I don't see
the worst run-ins ever. It's like, Jesus Christ, he's coming. You've seen him coming. He's got the kendo stick. He's already cut himself up. Why are you still standing in the ring?
He would do his entire entrance.
Yeah, as a matter of fact, you could finish this fucking match by the time he gets down here.
Exactly. Like, let's just hurry up and look. Let's just keep fighting. We got a few minutes. I mean, yeah, that was insane. He would do he wasn't even in a hurry. He would do his whole entrance like he was coming down for a match.
I'm not coming down there till I finish this six-pack.
You guys just wait a minute. I'll be right there.
All right. Daddy's got some drinking to do.
That's so, yeah. I completely forgot about that. Yeah, he would do that to do a run-in. But yeah, so that was Raw. So this is our last show before WrestleMania.
Yes.
We got to do our predictions for the big show.
Okay.
Now, we did this last month for Elimination Chamber, and you smoked me. You got I think all but one right on the show, and I got maybe half right. So you were much better. You were a much better predictor of the results than I was.
Well, I think we've talked enough about WrestleMania in the last couple of weeks that I think a lot of our predictions are going to go the same way.
I think so too. I think most of them. There are a few that I'm not sure about, but most of them are pretty obvious calls to me. So let's go through one at a time. I have a list here of there have been 8 announced matches, and I have a list here. And I have no idea what order they're going to be on the show, except for the pre-show match and the main event. So we'll just go through the list that I have on the order I have it. First is the pre-show. Is the 4-way for the tag titles. The Usos defending against Los Matadores, the Real Americans, Ryback, and Curtis Axel. That's actually one of the ones that's kind of tough for me to call. But if I had to call, I would say that they'll probably put the belts on the Real Americans.
All right. Well, I'm going to have to disagree with you.
Yeah, that's a tough one. But I'm going to go Real Americans.
Now, I think that putting the belts on the Real Americans would be an excellent choice, but it seems to me like the Usos just got them. They are hot right now. The fans like them. There's no reason to take the belts off of them, and we want to start the show on a high spot, so we let the Usos go over.
Alrighty, there we go. Next is let's do the 6-man with the Shield versus Kane and the Outlaws. I'm calling that one for the Shield.
So that would be nice, and you want to make the Shield look strong, but I don't think that you would weaken them any if you had somehow them get screwed in the match to lose it, and put that I think draws out a little bit more of a feud with Shield and the corporation or whatever. Could bring in more stuff with the New Age Outlaws while they're still there. So just to be devil's advocate, I'm going with corporate on that one.
Okay.
By screw job. By screw job.
Okay, and there may be we may still see an unexpected turn too from someone in the Shield. Maybe they haven't completely forgotten about the last 6 months. Okay, well, so you're going Kane. You're going Team Kane for that. I'm going Shield.
Okay.
Next is the Divas Championship clusterfuck with all 14 Divas. I believe every Diva on the main show at this point in a single fall free for all for the Divas Championship. You might as well throw a dart at this one. I would say you're saying you hear that it's going to be Brie, so I'm just going to go for that. I'll call it for Brie. But I think if it's not Brie, the only other one that really makes sense is probably Tamina, because at least there's a story there coming out of the match.
Right. I think there's potential there for an AJ Tamina match in the future. So I am going to say, and I've been quite impressed with her lately. She's really coming along, but I'm going to say AJ retains that title.
That would make me so happy, because I think she's the only one who's over enough to deserve the title.
She's actually every week looking better, and I respect that. But first I thought she was too dainty, too pretty. I didn't really like her as a wrestler. But the more I watch her, the more I realize that she's adjusting well and becoming quite the women wrestler. So I'm impressed. I mean, for a WWE wrestler, women's wrestler, she's come along quite a way.
I agree with you. I think she's really grown into it, and I would love to see her keep the title. But I get the feeling they're going to take it off of her. So I'll call that one for Brie Bella, because you said something to me before about Brie and Bryan are both going to win titles, which that's I'm sure that someone in the WWE thinks that would be awesome. So the real life couple, and they both have titles. Next is the Battle Royal, the Andre Memorial Battle Royal. That is a 30-man over the top rope Battle Royal. It's basically the Royal Rumble without the countdown. Everybody in the ring at once. Again, you could throw a dart at this one. Something, I don't know. I'm gonna call it for Sheamus.
Okay.
I don't know why I'm saying that, but there's something about the build-up and about the fact that Sheamus and Christian are in it, and they never really had like a proper blow-off to their feud, and it just kind of got folded into the Battle Royal. I don't think they'll give it to Big Show, because that's the obvious choice, although maybe they'll do that anyway just as an Andre tribute. But I'm going to call it for Sheamus.
I am going with the Big Show.
Okay.
I think it's a good way to honor the big guy. And you got Andre, who was the big guy, back in the day. Big Show got compared to Andre so many times. Plus, he ran for a moment being, son of Andre.
Yeah.
And I think it would be respectful to have, like you said, it's hard. It's a battle royal. It don't take much for 5 or 6 guys to get on the Big Show and just toss him right over the top rope. But I think Big Show. They teased us a little bit last night, but I think he stands a really good chance of winning this thing.
Yeah, and I mean, honestly, even though I'm not calling it for him, it wouldn't be the end of the world if Big Show did win, because he hasn't had very many, big WrestleMania moments. And he's been with the company for a long time, and it is, if you're going to make it about Andre, it does make sense to put it on sort of the heir apparent to Andre.
They got to make it up to him somehow. He lost to Akabono. He lost to Floyd Merriweather.
Yes.
It's like, for Christ's sake, let's give him a WrestleMania moment.
Yeah. Well, he did beat, was it Cody for the Intercontinental title that one year, like 2 years ago? So there you go. And then he lost it like 2 weeks later or something. But okay, so that's the Andre Battle Royal. Next is Cena and Bray Wyatt, the match that I am almost anticipating more than any of the other matches. This could go either way, and it would be completely fine with me. But I think that Cena's going to go over. I think they're going to do, it'll be a competitive match, and Bray will go to war with John Cena and come this close to beating him. But the way they're building this feud with it being about Cena's legacy and the way they're making Wyatt into be this like really dark, evil heel, I just don't see Cena losing this match. But if he did, I would be thrilled, because either way would be fine with me, because I think it's going to be a good match. But I'm calling it for Cena.
Yeah, Cena is today's modern day Hogan, which you put adversity in front of his face, and you make him look weak in the face of that, but he overcomes it because he is that Superman wrestler. Hogan was that guy back in the day, and Cena is that guy today. I will agree with you and say that Wyatt will probably beat the shit out of him, and you got to make Wyatt look strong, but Cena will overcome and win that match. So I agree.
Hey, we got an agreement. We got an agreement. Next then would be Undertaker and Brock. That's going to be Undertaker. I don't really see any other way around that, unless Brock goes into business for himself and just like puts him in a chokehold and just knocks him out. Yeah, I'm taking Undertaker over Brock.
Yeah, I think we're going to agree on that one too. I would love to see Brock Lesnar win against the Undertaker, but Brock is not worthy of a wrestler enough to be the one to beat the streak. So it's going to be the Undertaker. He doesn't deserve to beat the streak. He's not that guy.
Yeah, and he hasn't really been pushed as that guy, which
Right.
isn't entirely his fault, but you're right. So then next is Bryan versus Triple H, and the winner gets a slot in the main event. That has got to be Daniel Bryan winning that. The only other way I can see it going down is if they do some kind of a clusterfuck finish where both guys end up getting into the final match. I hope that doesn't happen, but I think it's going to be. I think it's Bryan going over Triple H there.
Again, yeah, these main event ones, when we've been talking about the main three,
Yeah.
we're gonna go the same way on all these, because that's what I think is going to happen. That's the way the fan base is going right now. It just seems to be the logical thing to do when it comes to writing, is to grasp a hold of this movement right now and ride it out. You had a moment with Fandango, but you let it go. Don't let this one go. Put the belt on Bryan. I look for some kind of. I still would like to see Triple H post-attack Bryan. Bryan gets a quick win on him, catches Triple H off guard, and then Triple H lays the beat down on him afterwards. So it's like, and I would put this match early on in the show. That way the question is, we don't even know if Bryan's going to make it out here for the main event match tonight, and if he doesn't, then Triple H is going to step in to replace him anyways. It doesn't matter how he if he won or not. And then of course Bryan comes out to actually do the match. And it would be nice if they started off with Triple H and Bryan comes out of nowhere making a big four-way and he beats the shit out of everybody.
That would be cool. That would be cool. I think Bryan is definitely making it into the main event. I think it's going to be a three-way. I think it's going to be Bryan beating Triple H. But I do have this sort of nagging feeling in the back of my mind that they're going to book some sort of a double finish where Triple H gets in there too. Because they've just been pushing, Triple H has just been pushing the whole, I'm going to be in the main event. I'm going to do this myself. I'm going to show Orton and Batista how it, like he's put so much heat, not just on him versus Bryan, but on him versus Orton and Batista, that I have a nagging feeling that they're going to work something where all four guys end up being in the main event.
Yeah, so like I said, I mean, if this was completely reversed and Triple H beat Daniel Bryan, I would be equally as interested in seeing Triple H and the other two go at it. I mean, but we all know Randy and Triple H can work. I'm not so confident with Batista, but at least he's on a friendly basis with both these guys and trust them that he would be able to you have two strong wrestlers in there. And, I mean, as of right now, you still only have two strong wrestlers in there.
Right.
But, yeah, you got to have that. You got to have that hope for the fans. So you got to have the good guy in there. And, yeah, that is what they were lacking when they booked this match in the first place. That is why writing is going in the direction it's going, and they're going to put Bryan in the main event. But I will say, if you want to make 30 years of WrestleMania memorable, you show the fans that you're ready to make and commit to that change that they've been asking, and you put the belt on Bryan.
Oh, I agree. I'm saying, yeah, my prediction for the main event is Bryan wins the belt.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's the way it's going to go, and I think that's the way it has to go. I think if they do any other finish, I mean, God, think of what Raw is going to be like next week
Mm-hmm.
if they do anything other than Bryan leaving the building with the title. I mean,
New Orleans may have another disaster on their hands.
exactly. People will drag Triple H down and tie him up underneath the levee, and they will break it on purpose.
Mm-hmm.
And he will be the first to. They will sacrifice their city, and Triple H will be the first to go. They have to put the belt on Bryan. Otherwise, if they cock tease the fans again, like they did with Bryan versus Orton in the fall, I mean, if they do that and they end WrestleMania with anybody holding that title other than Bryan, it's just insane. It makes no sense at all. And you don't want to. It's fine to tease your fans, and it's fine to delay gratification, but you don't want to piss them off. And if they put the belt on somebody other than Bryan, it's just going to piss off the fans, and that's not what you want to do. So we agree on that one. That's got to be the way it goes.
Yeah, WrestleMania has to start on a happy note, and it has to end on a happy note. It's the biggest show of the year. You don't want to do it any other way than that.
Yeah. Well, because I think the only time, they've done it twice. The only time that they've ever ended WrestleMania with a heel walking out with the title was when Triple H kept the title at WrestleMania 16, and then when Miz kept the title against Cena at WrestleMania 27. But that wasn't even really the finish of the show. The finish of the show was Cena and Rock doing their thing after the match was over. But I don't think it's coincidence that both of those shows are kind of thought of as being lesser WrestleManias, at least in terms of their main events. When you think about like awesome WrestleMania shows, most people don't think about WrestleMania 2000 or WrestleMania 27. They think more like WrestleMania 3 or WrestleMania 10 or WrestleMania 17 or WrestleMania 4. Absolutely.
4 is the best.
So those are our predictions. We're running a little bit over, but I figured that would happen. It's the last show before WrestleMania. Let's talk about our Legend of the Week real quick, because we can't skip that, because the Legend of the Week this week, and I don't pick these, Doc picks these pretty much on his own, but the Legend of the Week this week is my favorite wrestler ever. So tell us about the legend, Doc.
Well, this week I'd like to announce that our legend is none other than Ricky the Dragon Steamboat. Ricky the Dragon, his original name is Richard Henry Blood. He was born on February 28th. That's the last day of February.
Yeah.
1953. So he's up there. He's better known by his ring name, Ricky the Dragon Steamboat. Now, Steamboat has had a long career in wrestling. He's wrestled in the AWA. He's wrestled in the NWA. He's wrestled in WCW, the WWF. He's been back and forth with WCW several times. He's held countless number of championships. He's held the U.S. Championship 4 times, over WCW, the television championship 4 times. He has held the tag team championships 12 different times, and he has held the world title once, but he held the world title. That is something that the WWE never gave Ricky the Dragon Steamboat. And you're talking about a man that at WrestleMania 3 burned the house down with Randy Savage in the best match, and still to this day is considered one of the best matches of all time. I respect Ricky the Dragon Steamboat because he's the only person that has got over in his career as a good guy and doesn't sway or jump over the fence. He has always, as far as I know, been a good guy, and that's the only wrestler I can actually say ever did that.
Yeah, I don't think you're right. I don't think he ever wrestled, at least not in any of his high-profile runs with NWA or WWE. I don't think he ever wrestled heel. He was babyface through and through, and he was one of the guys who came through that Vern Gagne training camp in the mid '70s, and so many just amazing wrestlers from the 70s and 80s and into the 90s were products of that training camp that Vern Gagne ran in the AWA. I mean, Ric Flair came through there. a whole, I think Jim Brunzell, just name after name. Sergeant Slaughter were trained in that training camp over the years, and Ricky Steamboat was one of them. And he had great matches in the late 70s. He had great matches in the 80s. He had great matches into the 90s when he had to retire because of an injury. And he's
still active. He is still active.
Oh yeah, he came back. Yeah, he eventually came back. He was retired for a long time, but yeah, he around WrestleMania 25 he came back, and now even today he still occasionally works. And he had that memorable program with Chris Jericho around WrestleMania 25, where he worked most of that 3-on-1 Legends match with Jericho at the actual WrestleMania, and wound up being a really, really decent match for a guy who was like in his 50s at the time. And then he had a 1-on-1 match with Jericho the month later at the Backlash pay-per-view that was also really excellent, especially considering he was a 50-something-year-old guy who hadn't actually wrestled a match in probably 15 years. But yeah, he had legendary matches with Ric Flair. People who say that his match with Savage at WrestleMania 3 was the greatest match ever, if that wasn't the greatest match ever, then people usually say it was one of the matches that Steamboat had with Ric Flair in 1989. I mean, so you have a guy in Ricky Steamboat who wrestled against two different opponents in matches that are widely considered to be the greatest match of all time. And it's hard to get two wrestling styles different than Ric Flair and Macho Man. I mean, they're both amazing wrestlers, two of the greatest ever. But Macho was was famous for wanting to lay his matches out very carefully beforehand, and Flair is more of a sort of call it in the ring type of guy. We'll just go out there and see what happens. And Steamboat was able to work with both of those guys and have just legendary, historic level matches. And he was, I can't say enough good things about him. He was amazing. He was one of the only guys, there's a handful of guys, I'd have to look it up to see everybody, but he was one of a very few people who worked not only the first Starrcade, but also the first WrestleMania. I think he wrestled Matt Bourne on the first WrestleMania.
Yes.
Yeah. And then a few years before that, he and Jay Youngblood won the tag titles from the Briscoes at the first Starrcade in a really good old school tag team match. So yeah, Steamboat is just, I mean, he's like at the top of my list. You know, there's so many wrestlers that I love whose work I've admired over the years, like Flair, like Savage, like Bret Hart, Rock and Roll Express, just on and on and on. Sting, but Steve Austin, but Ricky Steamboat is right up at the top for me. I just love everything the guy does, everything the guy did. I don't think I've ever seen him have like a bad match. And he was just involved in so many memorable angles. The throat stuff with Savage before WrestleMania 3 when crushed his larynx. Yeah, when Jake the Snake DDT'd him on the fucking floor.
And he could sell, man. He had a great way of selling to make you feel that he was in just tremendous pain. You know, when he had his, I still remember look. I just went red. Did you see that?
Yeah, you did. You're back in hell.
Oh well. we're almost wrapping it up, and
we're almost done. Yeah.
I'm being sentenced for a shitty show, I guess. I don't know. But no, yeah, Ricky the Dragon. I'm not a big a babyface guy. I never have been. But I respect the shit out of Ricky Steamboat for what he has accomplished. He's a great aerial wrestler, great technician. He is a family man and super nice, and you cannot run into too many like him in the world of wrestling. He is the all-around gentleman. He's an awesome guy.
Yeah, that's the story I hear too. He's just a great guy. He's almost universally admired, and my favorite wrestler. If anybody wants to know who my favorite wrestler is of all time, it's Ricky Steamboat. So let's wrap this up. You've gone red.
I've gone red. Red alert! Red alert!
Yeah, the Romulans are attacking Doc's house. So this will be our next show will be our post WrestleMania show. We'll go through our predictions and see who got most of them right or wrong. It looks like it's going to go really good for one of us and really bad for the other one. because we disagreed on about half of them.
Yeah, we'll just count those, though. We'll just count the ones we disagreed on.
Yeah.
The other ones are no-brainers for us.
Yeah. Yeah, I think the ones the last three that we agreed on, it's really, really hard to imagine them going any other way.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, so that'll be fun. It's always fun to talk wrestling right after a pay-per-view, and then right after also the post WrestleMania Raw, which has been a highlight the last few years, and just the whole WrestleMania week stuff, because not only is Mania on Sunday, but they're doing a lot of WrestleMania themed stuff on the WWE network leading up to it. Today was the press conference. Later this week they're doing a live Legends Roundtable, which is really cool, talking about WrestleMania stuff. Saturday night is the Hall of Fame ceremony, which they're going to show live on the network, and then of course Sunday is the big show itself, WrestleMania, including the pre-show. So it's a big week to be a wrestling fan. It's like Christmas if you're a wrestling fan.
Absolutely. Where will you be watching WrestleMania this year?
Well, if the invitation is still open, I thought I was coming over to your place.
Oh yeah, you can do that. By all means, I'll have to clean up, I guess.
Or not.
You're absolutely welcome to come over and watch the show. That's great. I completely forgot.
That's cool. That's okay.
Sorry, I've
forgot.
been kind of drowning myself in these new bacon flavored Ritz crackers. They're awesome.
No wonder you forgot.
I'm looking down at that box going, I want some of those crackers.
Hey, let's finish this fucking show so I can get these crackers.
I can't be eating crackers while I'm talking, you know?
So, yeah, we'll be back next week to talk about WrestleMania and Raw and everything else. It'll be a fun show. Thank you guys for joining us, and we will be back next week to talk about wrestling with you some more. So, see you next week, Doc.
Love you guys. Take care.